Today's News Talk Radio.
Now we're talking.
TNT.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. Patrick Henningsen, your host here, live and direct. We're still in hour number one. And as we said before the break, we're going to pivot over to Europe. Specifically, everybody's talking about the big European powers. Those are Germany and France. Major election results. How major are they? What are they going to mean coming down the pipeline in the next couple of months? France is obviously one of the biggest players there. UN Security Council member, absolutely pivotal in terms of the EU. Which direction is France going to go? What's that going to mean regarding Ukraine? And so many other key issues. Let's bring Freddie Ponton onto the program right now, live and direct from France. Freddie, you're probably one of the only people I know that can figure out the labyrinth that is French politics. It's incredibly complex. And to be honest, you have to be a French speaker and you have to be really studying the political system there to know, first, what's going on, and secondly, where things might be headed. Just give us your initial reactions, Freddie, to the election results over the weekend.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for having me today. Well, it's an interesting time we're living, and I'm sure the world is trying to make sense of it. And it's very interesting to actually read the international press, trying to guess what really is going on and what are we to make of Macron's latest move as far as dissolving the National Assembly following this basically thunderclap to the establishments and to the Renaissance party of Emmanuel Macron. So obviously things didn't go well for him. And he, I think himself, trying to make sense of what happened and trying to react the best way possible. But clearly we can see that there is a trend in Europe as far as far-right movements getting tractions, not only in France, in Germany, in Holland. This is something that we're seeing across the board. So there's a reason for that. And I think it's important to break it down. And perhaps the French scenario is perhaps going to help us see a bit more, having more clarity on what's going on. So very interesting. Of course, we saw Macron very quickly calling a snap elections to prevent basically the rise of the far right for the 2027 presidential election in France. So that's probably the primary goal, is to prevent and very quickly take control of the narrative in order to basically unite any parties that is obviously against the far-right movement and even the far-left movement to some degree. Because if you accumulate, if you will, the points and the results, you can clearly see that 50% of the votes for this European election in France went to extreme party or far right or far left party, with, of course, the National Rally and Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella's parties doing really, really good. I mean, the numbers are impressive. And there is big question that needs to be answered, obviously. So that's what we will talk about today. We saw Macron early this morning at 11 o'clock, basically entertaining a 2 hours long press conference where he divulged a little bit of his plan and is trying to very quickly explain this result and trying to explain why the French actually reacted the way they did, why the French voted the way they did. And he's trying to basically put words in French people's mouth, if you will, and saying, well, I know better. I know why you did it. I know you're angry. I know that you're reacting to something, and I'm going to explain why it is and what needs to be done. So that's a little bit what we saw earlier this morning. And of course, we need to understand whether the snap election, the call for a snap election, is a ploy. What's the strategy really behind that? And I think that's very interesting for those interested in politics and the moves.
So, I mean, a lot of people are looking at this two ways, Freddie. Some people are saying this is a huge gamble by Macron. And then there's another group of commentators that are looking at this, recognizing what an actually skilled Machiavellian creature Macron is. that, he once he burrows in, he's got backing of the banking cartel. He's got the WAF behind him. He's probably got U.S. intelligence behind him. He's got all these sort of power blocks, big pharma, the globalists, basically, the financial class. He himself was groomed by Jacques Attali, no pun intended, groomed by Jacques Attali. So this is not just some inconsequential political figure. He was put into power for a reason, to push an agenda through to transform the country, and maybe not for the better, but he's not going to go easily. Do you think this is a huge gamble, this dissolving of parliament? And could he even co-opt the opposition and somehow pull off some sort of major surprise through the back doors and back rooms and the deals that might be struck? What do you think?
Well, there's different criteria that needs to be taken into considerations. The first factor, which I think is important, is the time factor, because he's leaving very little time for the parties to organize themselves, if you will. So he's clearly, in 20 days, he's asking the National Rally and the left to get together, and more importantly, to find credible candidates throughout the country, which is something that will take normally months to do. And then, of course, to entertain vital debates about the crucial issues, because he's obviously, as I said this morning, taking on the role of explaining the reason and controlling the narrative, so that he can say, well, we have a lot of social issues in France. People have lost their buying powers. We've got inequality across the social spectrums. We got this red light district that obviously feel like second-class citizens, and on and on. But all these reasons revolve around social issues rather and money, if you will, and comfort, rather than to actually address the real problem, the elephant in the room. If you look at the Russian media, they very quickly talked about Macron's using Ukraine as a kind of a flagship to promote basically his agenda on the European stage. That must have been very costly. And others might look at it as basically someone which is so globalist, is so European, and is so embedded in all these major international maneuvers that he has basically disregarded France, and that perhaps could be the reason of it. So there's many ways to explain it, but literally this is not just a social issues, a social kind of a collapse, if you will, and the faith into the establishments. I mean, this is something that has grown over the years. We go back to 2018 with the Yellow Vest movement. We can clearly see that there has been a long road since the 2018, and nothing has really changed. We've not been heard. It seems that we've been very much repressed over the years, and that our voice has not been heard. And so this is what's disappeared from Macron, if you will, is the ability to be able to talk to the French people and explain to him where he's taking us. And right now he's taking us into a war with this Ukrainian war, this idea of coming up again and irritating the Russians. It seems like he's almost looking forward to a war to save himself. But he's got a presidential mandate until 2027, and his champion, Gabriel Attal, the current Prime Minister of France, has not performed as expected. So he's facing a real political problem, and he's really facing almost a vote of no confidence, if you will, in this government. So these legislative elections are really considered as a referendum on the French government itself.
And do you see a scenario, Freddie, where you would Marine Le Pen, could she become prime minister after the next election? Is this a possibility, or is it going to be somebody else that's selected? What might the assembly look like in a month's time? What do you see?
Well, on the evening of July the 7th, which is the end of the second round for the legislative in France, in July, if the National Rally managed to do a good score, or even a better score than at the European, which is what the polls are showing at the moment, that they might even get a bigger score, then of course they will have to put one of their own in the seat of the prime ministers to lead the French government, and that man has already been chosen. His name is Jordan Bardella. He's the basically Marine Le Pen champion. He's been basically under the wings of Marine Le Pen, at least really clearly and strongly since 2019. And he's been groomed, and he's been really profiled as the candidate, at least for the prime minister's positions. Now, further down the line for the presidency, no one knows whether Marine Le Pen is going to be interested in putting herself as the candidate for the presidential election in 2027, or if perhaps Jordan Bardella's popularity will have even grown further, and perhaps it will be a better choice. And then, of course, there's a lot of discussions about Marine Le Pen current situations with the law, because she's been indicted with 26 other people for problems of with the using European fund and public funds. It's a problem of embezzlement, if you will, money that she would have used to pay people, not for their work with the European Union, but actually for the party itself. So she's facing basically the possibility of 10 years on eligibility so that she wouldn't be able to become president of France. So she needs a plan B. And of course, Jordan Bardella will fit in that particular place, you know. So this is where we are at the moment. I mean, each party have their own problem, and we see a lot of tensions within all the parties in France. But the time at this moment is really about unity. And we can clearly see already, literally on the back of the National Assembly and the call for these snap elections, very quickly on the right side of the political spectrum, we saw the Republicans, the head of the Republican, Mr. Ciotti, coming very, very clearly forward and say, well, we're going to be joining the national rally of Marine Le Pen against Macron. And this is a real almost like seen as a treachery from the Macron side of it, because the Republicans have kind of been a buffer for Macron in the National Assembly, and they've been supporting Macron to quite a substantial degree. So to see them now using this opportunity and coming and from the right wings now starting to solidify a bloc to go against Macron, it's really something that nobody expected, really. And even in the own party of the Republicans, there's been some tension, because some do not agree with this association and this collaboration for these particular legislatives. And then you see exactly the same reactions on the left side of the spectrums with Mélenchon, with the socialists, the communists, with Raphael Glucksmann. A lot of people are talking about uniting together to form a single bloc. But there's also a problem with the political agenda itself, because some of them do not agree, for example, on topics like Ukraine. Raphael Glucksmann is a little bit, cautious about that. And then Jean-Luc Mélenchon has been kind of portrayed as someone that has some anti-Semitic rhetoric because he supports Palestine. So all that makes it very difficult, and it's very difficult to create a left bloc, if you will, that could unite as well and even weaken more Renaissance and Macron itself. So if you get two strong far right and far left parties against Macron, Macron will lose. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, so it's populist left, populist right coming together under a couple of issues, bound together. I assume you've also got Eurosceptic elements, Frexit elements lingering in there. It is an interesting split. You have probably some of these parties, Mélenchon, National Front, the far left and National Rally agree that Ukraine probably isn't a good place to start World War III. But on the Israel issue, there's a split there. There's a disagreement there. So those are where those fissures are. It's very interesting. Trying to mend those fences is going to be quite tricky. And I'll maybe get your comment on that. But also, where is Zamora? This is another mercurial character in French politics. Which way do you think he's going to be drifting in this paradigm?
Who's candidate? Sorry, I couldn't hear the name.
Zamora.
Oh, Zamora. Well, Zemmour, it's a bit of a tricky situation, and I explain to you why in few words. First of all, Zemmour is partnering with Marion Maréchal. Marion Maréchal is Marine Le Pen's sister. So it's not a secret in France that there's been tension in between both sisters, and they do not agree on many things. So Marion Maréchal has joined with Zemmour, and it's really clear that from the right part of the spectrum, if you will, I think Bardella, himself, Jordan Bardella, and from day one, he's been very clear about uniting the right. Doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Zemmour, it doesn't matter to him. What it means is that we need to have a solid right and we need to stop this fragmentation. So that's his political view. The problem that he has is in his own house, if you will, at the national rally, Marine Le Pen does not support Zemmour whatsoever. Whether this is because of the sister or whether this is simply because she has a problem with Zemmour that she cannot just overcome. And she's been very clear already in the press that she's not going to be uniting herself with Zemmour. She'll do it with the Republicans, with Ciotti and others, anybody, members of the Republican that wants to join these coalitions and put pressures on a Renaissance. But as far as Zemmour is concerned, she's still the boss. So, Jordan Bardella, I think Bardella is a very important person to understand, because he's going to be part of this political scenery for quite some time. So it's important to understand where he comes from. He's only 28 years old. He was against Gabriel Attal, which also is a very young prime minister, and he's demolished him really clearly. So this is someone that has obviously a lot of political acumen. He's been groomed, as I say, he's been taken care by some of the top consultants in France to make sure that his storyline, the narrative that they're trying to build around him, is serious, is solid, is appealing as well. This is someone that is coming from a family that was immigrant in France. They built that as a success story. He's got Italian origin, he's got Algerian origin, and they built all this profile around that. His mother is a janitor, worked for school, but they completely basically obliterated, if not occulted, basically the fathers of Jordan Bardella, which was someone that was pretty well off, someone that is comfortable in life, comfortable enough to send him to private school, someone that was paying holiday to send him to New York, buy him a new car when he graduated. So a lot of things, are being occulted, as far as who really Bardella is. But this is obviously someone extremely well educated, and he's at a very young age as an appeal with Jean-Marie Le Pen, the Front National, Marine Le Pen's father, and he was seen queuing for hours trying to get into his meetings, got his card, and then eventually enter with the national rally with Marine Le Pen. That saw in him someone, he's a very tall guy, very attractive, very handsome, soft-spoken, very athletic, and I think she saw in him a possibility to reach certain voters that she couldn't get herself because of the legacy of the name, if you will. The Le Pen dynasty is not playing in her favor. So she needed another face for the party, someone young, someone attractive, and someone that could appeal to those that she couldn't reach, especially the women's. And that's a very important factor, the young people and the women's. And it seems that Jordan Bardella has really fulfilled that mission, because a lot of women, we saw in the numbers and in the polls and in the analysis of it, that women are very much in support of Jordan Bardella. And of course, this young generations that's now starting to get far more involved than they used to in the political scene and going back to the voting polls, and that's also a very important thing, because often this kind of elections go one way or the others, depending on where the youth are willing to go. And in this particular instance, I think there's two categories. These are the young people that are already, have a very clear idea about, their fight and what they're supporting. But there's also all these young people that are never voted because they simply never believe that it will make any difference. So I think Jordan is bringing that kind of fresh air into the mix, and perhaps he's got a lot of people that were away from the poll for many years voting during these elections. And this will be confirmed, obviously, on July the 7th. We'll see that when that time comes. So it's very interesting to see how do you gain support? Why are you getting support in the midst of a major international and geopolitical move in which France is included? We saw Macron, you've seen coming onto the stage, literally clearly talking about sending 200 instructors in the western part of Ukraine. We don't know how they're going to be equipped, who's going to equip them, but that's going to be a French military presence in Ukraine. He's already confirmed that he's going to send around 20 Mirage 2000 jet fighters, the Mirage 2000-5, which is a defense jet fighter. Very interesting to see how this is going to play out, because deploying this kind of tools, it can be extremely dangerous. They can be retrofitted with a Scalp missile, presenting a lot of risk at the border of Russia. All that is getting us very close to World War III and perhaps to a nuclear doomsday. So the French people also do react to that, and it definitely played in the equation.
We've got a couple of minutes left in this segment. Afterwards, I do want to talk to you about the UN report from Israel. That is just stunning. You did a beautiful breakdown of that on Twitter, Freddie. I mean, it really vindicates everything that we talked about for the last 7 months. But that aside, just because we've got a couple minutes left on France, one of the more canny political commentators is Filippo from the Patriots movement, and I know he's also a leading sort of Frexit voice. What has his reaction been? Because I often find his position, his comments to be very interesting, because how big of a issue is Frexit right now within the right? I know it's not probably the best thing to lead with from a European elections point of view, but I'm talking about what the people want on the street. Can you comment on this?
Well, it's very, very important. You know, Filippo is filling the gap for those like myself, for example, that are sovereignist in nature, that don't see any value in supranational bodies like NATO, the European Union, or the WHO, and on and on. The list is pretty long. I think that these organizations have failed us for a very long time. So Filippo is trying to articulate and reassure that basically we can be great again as a countries. But it really takes for us the ability to control the level of power which have been surrendered to the European Union. So you can say you're a nationalist, that you say that you're pro-France, you can promise everything on the paper. It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, all the big decisions are taken from the European Union. If you're going to address the issue of immigration, it doesn't matter. You can be from the far right and say, oh, well, all those that I don't like, they can go back where they come from. That's the kind of rhetoric you can hear. Well, you're not going to be able to do that with the European Union, because the treaties, because of the international law and all the things that have been put in place will not allow you to do that legally, or you're going to get a lot of fines. So, as I say, governing France with basically Europe on top of you, telling you what to do and how to do it, it's just simply impossible. So I think Filippo is very logical. He's extremely well educated. He went for high schools and Sciences Po and so on. So he's someone that has not only the political acumen to understand what he's saying, but to address it in a very simple way, so that anyone in France can understand that we cannot talk about sovereignty. We cannot basically promote, everything that is or that makes us French, unless we are in control of our foreign policies and our, and the way forward for our countries. We cannot do that being embedded in organizations like NATO or going alongside with, the WHO pandemic plan and so on. All that has to be French decisions. We don't want to be dependent on other supranational body. And that's really what Filippo incarnates, and he articulates it very well, and he's gained a lot of popularity in France. He's still very small, he's not a danger for anyone, but we can clearly see that he's an alternative that is going to definitely over the years grow in popularity.
Yeah, we'll keep a close eye on this Frexit movement because I think there's a very strong impulse in France. It's very a growing impulse, very anti-Brussels.
Well, look, Patrick, if you look at the Italy, with Meloni, everybody was like, "Oh, she's going to change everything. She's going to do this. She's going to do that." They just forgot to take a look at who she really was, who she's mingling around, with people, with the Aspen Club and all that kind of thing. This is someone that has promised so many things and that has absolutely not been able to deliver anything on a mandate so far. So people have been taken for a ride. And that's, far right has the problem, is not great ideas, maybe sometimes a bit too much. There's just a lot of radicals in these parties. And this is going to be weaponized. It's going to be used by lobbies. If you look at the Israeli lobbies in France, they're going to take advantage of that. They're going to reshift basically their priorities and say, well, we're far right. We got a far right government in Israel. Well, let's kind of hook up together and try to do something together. And so again, there's recuperation. People are going to recoup something out of that. And then, of course, the big test, if they are to win in July the 7th, is to demonstrate the ability to govern. Saying you can govern and proving and showing on the ground, boots on the ground in the parliament that you can govern and be respected, it's a complete different exercise. Do they have the experience? Do they have that? No, they have none of that. Okay, so it's a risk. It's a gamble also for the French people to decide, and to say, are we giving these people a chance and will they actually deliver on the promise? And sovereignists like myself, just don't buy this, because simply if you want to be sovereign and you're nationalist and you really want to, the best for France, then surely you cannot do that being under the chapel of the European Union. You just simply cannot do that because it won't work. So unless you're going to have that dialogue, as far as I'm concerned, from a political point of view, you're not serious. You're just, grabbing power. That's what it is.
I like how you said the chapel of the European Union. Some people call it a cathedral. It's just gotten so massive and uncontrollable. But anyway, we'll talk about that hopefully in the future as well. Freddie Ponton, independent researcher and journalist. I want to take a break right now with TNT. When we come back, I want to talk to Freddie about this new UN report on Gaza and Israel, the war crimes. It's really revealing. We'll get Freddie to break this down for us because I think this is going to be a key conversation. All this and more on the other side. I'm Patrick Henningsen. Stay with us. We'll be right back.